Hey everybody, this is Dan.
And this is Ron.
And this is Nominee Questionable Movies. And today we have a very special guest on today. I believe the first Oscar winner we've ever had on the program. She's done no, okay.
I've never won an Oscar. I have not even been nominated.
Oh, okay. I thought you guys. Zach was saying you got in with one of those Martin Scorsese movies. Okay.
Yeah, I was thanked.
You were thanked. Okay.
Yeah, I went. It was a great party. Got to go to Elton John's party. That was cool.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And I was part of the crew that we won the Oscar for best costumes, but I personally didn't win an Oscar.
So you were part of it was like you were on the team that won the Super Bowl, though.
Yeah.
Like you're not the coach, you don't own the team, but okay, you don't get the ring.
Yeah.
And that was for The Aviator?
Yes, it was. That was so long ago now when you think about it.
Yeah, I remember I saw that in the theaters. I think I was still in high school.
When we had theaters.
When we had theaters. Yeah, that was during the theater period. But and so we got a little cut off here. So to introduce Lisa Padovani has done costume work on numerous things, including Oz, which we're going to talk about a little bit today. I think we're probably going to talk about a few things today. Numerous Martin Scorsese movies. I think the most recent thing I saw on IMDb is you were working on Gotham.
The last syndicated show I did, I've done like other stuff here and there. I mean, I worked on the Trial of the Chicago 7, but I wasn't the key designer on that. So, I guess it was Sneaky Pete on Amazon. I did the second season. Okay. Yeah.
Cool. And so I guess for the audience who usually just sees the results that go on screen, what exactly goes into, like are you picking out the costumes? Are you fabricating the costumes? Are you doing a little this?
It depends on it depends on the project. You make less costumes when it's a contemporary show, like Sneaky Pete. It's pretty straightforward. You have characters, of course, but you make less. But making costumes, you make a lot for period stuff or any kind of fantasy or, made up world. Also, if you have a lot of stunts, like, if your lead guy has a stunt double, has a photo double, there's a lot of doubles for actors. You have to make the costume because you usually can't find it to buy it, like 6 suits that are the same in the sizes that you need, So, and economically it's the same, really. Maybe it's a little bit more to make, but then you get exactly what you want to. It's hard to shop in bulk like that. It just doesn't really work out. You just can't get the numbers of stuff that you need, so you make it.
And so when you're picking out the costumes, you're working with the director and the actors, or how much kind of leeway do you have to kind of create the character through the clothing?
Well, there's a lot of people part of the process. You always take your marching orders from the director, and you can kind of feel out what the producer input is going to be. Some producers really want to say, some producers leave it all to the creatives. So it depends on that. But in television especially, there's more cooks in the kitchen because you have network, you have all these different people. So usually if I do a fitting on an actor, you'll present like your favorite 6. You never show something you don't like. That's like rule number 1, because they'll always pick it. It's just sort of weird, but it's true. And then you're like, oh crap, I don't even like that one. So you only present what you like, and then you kind of talk through it, and they usually come to a consensus. Even writers want to see, I know on Sneaky, I always sent pictures to the writers too. And then you come up with the look that way. It's very fast. They have to answer you quickly. They can't, debate forever. Movies, you have a lot more time. Television, no.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you're sending a lot of pictures and you're just sort of like hot or not.
Yeah, you already put together.
Well, maybe not so much with hot or not with Oz, but like, does it work or not, I guess.
Well, Oz, because of, that was the 90s now, if you think about it.
It was, yeah.
I didn't even have a laptop yet. I didn't have a computer. So was Polaroids. So it was much more physical. of having meetings and showing Polaroid photos and maybe even the real clothes. Sometimes I'll bring the real clothes in and show them, and because you can't see something in a photo. And especially if you're aging or distressing or over dyeing or, you know, changing it in some way. Say you want this to go further, you want it to be, you know, less is harder, but, you know, to just show what you're doing depending on the storyline. It's all driven by the story.
Huh. And so how did you end up in the costuming profession?
You know, it's weird. I mean, I went to film school, and I graduated with a degree in filmmaking, which kind of means nothing, but it was fun to go to film school. And I moved to Manhattan. And I don't know. I started doing production stuff on low budgets, and I wasn't loving it. I wasn't becoming like a director right away. I needed to make money. So I just sort of fell into costumes. I felt like I could do it. I didn't feel like it was a stretch for me mentally. I kind of got it, and you just kind of learn as you go. And if you work for really good people, then you learn great skills, you know? So I worked for some really great designers, and kind of taught me to be fearless in a way. You know, you can just go for it. I mean, you know, the industry changes constantly, and it's gotten cheaper, and let's not even talking about COVID. So it's harder to get the jobs because the more you know, the more they don't want you sometimes. Weird to say, but
like overqualified.
Well, they know they can't get away with paying you nothing. They know they can't get away with, I don't torturing you, you know, that you'll call them on it. And costumes is one of those departments that's the first one to get beat up on, for sure, by producers. If a show is having a problem, they'll fire the costume designer first.
Really?
Yeah, because
did not know that.
Producers, somebody will say you gotta fire somebody. It's not working. Does, you know, whatever. It might have nothing to do with costumes, but they have to show like they're doing something, and they'll fire a costume designer. You're like, well, it didn't save the writing, didn't save the directing, didn't save the acting. You know, it's a shitty industry. Sorry.
It's all good.
So why are you still in it?
Yeah, hire me. It's a really hard industry. It's really difficult. It really is. Yeah, it's stressful.
Yeah, you should get into podcasting. Like the most
Right?
I ever have to do is kind of poke around to make sure you didn't fall asleep. But like,
because I'm the one that has the Zoom link.
Oh. Nice.
I'm critical. I may not say as much or ask as much, but I'm critical because I have the Zoom account.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, he's like all the guys in the control tower, but cool. So,
Yes.
Never mind. Oh, I was just going to say, and as you can see, somebody has to have a sniffly nose. So.
Oh well, it's not me today, thank God.
Living on the edge.
Right.
So you get into costuming, and like when would you say you started working in the field? Like early 90s?
Yeah. You know, I started as a production assistant. So I really started in the late 80s. I graduated college in 85, and I just started working right away. I just, you know, but I was working free on stuff, you know, doing all those things you do when you first start, just to get to know people. And it was, you know, there's some crazy stories. Low budget world is wild and crazy.
So low budget New York in the early 90s, like who were you working with? Like Tom DeSillo and people like that? Or
I worked on a Tom DeSillo movie. I did. The Real Thing, I think it's called.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I did wardrobe. I wasn't designing it, and it was fine. He's cool. We're Facebook friends.
And so wardrobe versus design. So like how many people do you usually have working on a costuming? Like how many people are on the costuming team generally? And like well, I guess it would be different as small.
Yeah, it depends. Yes, it
production,
depends on the show. I mean, the most employees I ever had was when I did Boardwalk Empire, because we would have these big scenes with lots of background, and everybody's in period clothes. So I think the most we ever had was like 50 people.
Well, so the costuming department was probably like the most critical part of that show.
Well,
Like if the costume
it was
department
big.
shuts down, the whole thing shuts down.
Well, costuming, production design, those kind of production values were very important to sell the period. We did beautiful costumes on that show. I'm very proud of that show. And we got nominated for Emmys every year, but we never won. And you know why?
Right.
Game of Thrones,
Game
baby.
of Thrones.
Oh, those.
Are those even real clothes on them in Game of Thrones? I thought they just
they're
put them
made.
on.
They're made. They're made, and I know the costume designer, and she's a really great costume designer. But
I thought they made most of that show in Microsoft Paint.
Well, they made backgrounds probably. They made, dragons.
Right.
But
nobody had to find the dragon clothes.
Yeah. Yeah. So they beat us every year. It sucked because people like the show better. That's really what it comes down to. Those award shows are really less about craft, unfortunately, and more about popularity.
Right.
Like the presidency.
Oh, correct.
But
so you could have a show that was maybe much lower ratings or less seen, but had some phenomenal costumes in it, but it's not as popular.
I don't know. I can't tell you that. Because it takes money to do phenomenal costumes. So people have usually seen it. You know what I mean? It's
right.
You can do really great things and subtly for low budge, but phenomenal, I don't know if that's the word I would feel real proud of having like $500 and like making a whole film. I've done that. You're like, I don't know how I did that, but I did that.
And so is it like a very different creative process working on, say, a contemporary piece where you have to communicate the character through the costume very subtly like Oz versus something where you have a lot more, although I guess with like Boardwalk Empire is probably a lot of like research more than necessarily like trying to fit it directly to the character.
Well, it's both. You have to do the research first, and then and also depends on the body of your actor. The 20s was tough on women clothing wise. And if you're voluptuous, it's a hard shape to put on women that are curvy. So if I had a real skinny actress, she looked great in the clothes. If I had a curvier actress, you had to like figure it out and maybe modify it a bit. Maybe it's not 100% on point historically, but you can't have your actress looking terrible, or frumpy if that's not part of the character. You really have to, it's a fine line. It's tricky. It can be really tricky. Yeah. And for men too, 20s, the suits are really tight and skinny for the most part, but you had a lot less overweight people in those days than you do now. And, I get these giant actors sometimes that are like pumping iron and stuff. And you're like, when I see those guys are cast, you just want to kill yourself because they look weird in the clothes. They don't fit the clothes. You have to custom make, men didn't look like that. The bodies didn't look like that. So it's hard, but I gotta just put a shout out to hair and makeup. I mean, that is super important. If you don't have good hair and makeup, forget it. Doesn't sell the period.
That's definitely the.
Oh no. I was just watching something and they had like, it's supposed to be like 1890s and totally contemporary hair on these women, totally contemporary makeup. And it just starts looking like a soap opera. It looks crap. Looks like crap, doesn't make any sense. So, that's disappointing.
Do you find that when you watch movies and TV a lot, you're like having kind of like I know after I made a movie, like I would watch movies and then I just be like, wow, this is crap. Well, they're
it ruins it. Knowledge is not power when it
like
comes
you're watching
to
the finished sausage, but all you can think about is how the sausage got made,
Yeah, it's true. Once you're in that factory of, making the film, I just saw something that, I'm not impressed much anymore. And since everybody's home, all I do is watch things. I'm like, my brain is soup. I watch so much content now. But I watched that one show, Pieces of a Woman, and it was actually made like a real movie. I haven't seen like something that looked like a character driven, subtly shot creative process like that in a long time. I was very impressed by it. So it still exists, but I think the director is Polish European. I think, as it's not so much an American sensibility, unfortunately. It's more of a European sensibility. But if you haven't seen it, you should watch it. I mean, it's like a Japanese film. It's really beautifully framed and shot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we haven't covered any Japanese movies yet. We should do that.
I'm a big fan.
soon.
I'm
Yeah,
a big
because I have a
fan of,
lot of them, but
and
we just
Korean
never got
film.
around to it yet. Oh yeah, Korean stuff.
Korean
There's a lot
film
of
is
good Korean
awesome.
stuff.
Like The Departed was based on, actually they were Hong Kong movies. This triptych of
Infernal
Hong Kong movie.
Affairs.
Yeah,
I think it was called,
Infernal
yeah.
Affairs. Yeah. And I mean, the writer did a really good job. He got an Oscar for the adaptation for Departed to consolidate those themes into one movie. And it really worked. I thought it really worked. It's a great movie.
Oh yeah, because localizations like have a fairly. It seems like it should be very easy to do, but it's very easy to do wrong.
Oh,
in my experience, like I've seen a lot of really terrible localizations of things.
yeah.
Like when I think localization, I think of like Turkish Star Wars or something. That's like the basis in my head. And then if that's the basis in your head when you watch it, like you're gonna be a lot happier with it, I guess, because it's not Turkish Star Wars. But like,
I've never tuned in. I gotta say.
Oh, okay.
If that's like produced for their audience, right? If they adapt something American
right
that way.
Well, I mean, like Turkish Star Wars, it's just sort of like Star Wars with a quarter of a Corman budget. It's just like, so it looks like they shot it in somebody's garage. It doesn't make any sense, and I probably watch that more than the actual Star Wars at this point. But
yeah, because you think it's hilarious,
right? Also, how did you first end up working with HBO?
Was it Oz? Maybe Oz was the first, but Oz was one of the first HBO shows going, right?
That was the first hour-long drama they had. It was on about 2 years before The Sopranos. It debuted.
Yes, and we shot in the old Nabisco factory that's on 9th Avenue and like between 14th and 15th Street or 15th and 16th. Really cool building. I did the first and the second season. And the first season, I was the assistant designer. So I got hired by this girl that I guess I must have interviewed. I'm not sure. It was a while ago. And then she left the show to go do something else. So I designed the second season. But it was cool because we really shot everything in these sets that they made in this building. So it was like being in prison.
Right, and it has that kind of like that.
They would use my office. They made all the offices part of the.
Wait, so which one was your office where
I was like isolated.
Rita Moreno did the therapy stuff?
No, not as cool as that, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
It literally was painted gray with like bars that could come on and off like a small cell. Yeah. If they had to turn the camera that way, and they're like, Lisa, get out, and they moved my desk down. It sucked. Wasn't too often, thank God, but it wasn't the cheeriest of offices.
So you got sent to the hole?
Yeah. It was just like, go buy craft service. We have to shoot this way. No, I had to keep it like in files so I could easily move. I didn't have stuff on the walls. It was different. Yeah, that was a cool show. I liked the actors a lot. It was very ensemble, so it was pretty cool. And we did, it was fun doing the flashbacks of showing how they got into prison. Yeah.
And that's kind of cool because that was like that was the first hour-long drama I think they ever had on HBO.
And it was pretty hardcore.
Yeah. And so, and I don't think like without Oz, there's no Sopranos. Or at least they wouldn't have thought to pick it up. I wasn't there at the time, but they both seem like I'm rewatching The Sopranos now, and there's like this heavy element of man soap that's like totally from Oz. Like it's all about like men expressing emotions through violence.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that Sopranos was shot entirely in New Jersey, which is unusual. I think it's because in those days they could get a really good deal. And they didn't start out with very much money on that show.
Right.
I went to
And
college
so,
with James Gandolfini.
oh, you did?
Yeah,
Oh,
poor Jimmy. I know. He
oh,
was younger than me, but yeah, he went to Purchase. It was a good school.
oh, yeah. I think a lot of those people went to Purchase, right?
A lot of actors, a lot of good. It's a
Yeah.
good acting program. Yeah, and filmmakers. I'm kind. I've got some very successful friends. You know, they don't call me, but I still call them friends.
And so they're like kicking you out of your office to shoot scenes. Like, what was
Yeah,
the shooting
funny. I didn't
environment
even
like?
think
Was it
about
just
that.
like, was it like a lot of? Was it kind of like Larry Sanders, where they're doing a lot of really quick setups with like roller skates and that kind of stuff? Like how much? It's hard. It's one of those shows where it's hard to tell how much
Yeah.
money HBO was throwing at it because everybody's wearing like a white T-shirt.
I mean, we're not everybody, but you know, like it was prison, so you had uniforms. Certain guys were in suits. The prisoners, you know, you had to come up with extra clothes to give them their look of whatever
Oh, like
they were
Saeed's
in.
hat
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. Like that's Adewale, you know, and
Mhm.
and because he had enough stubble on his head, because he shaved his head, that little hat never moved. It was amazing. You know, and because it was
That other. That wasn't even the hat. I was thinking of.
thinking of Adewale's little knit hat, and he would
Oh
purchase
yeah, no,
it.
that's definitely the hat of. Wait, how did I not even think of that? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
like the costuming question of the century we just answered there. How the hell does that hat stay on his head?
it was the actual stubble of his shaved head because you know the knit of the hat would just sort of, it was like Velcro.
Oh
I was
man,
surprised. I know we had such nice actors on that show. Really, truly, that I gotta say that's the best part. You know, some of our background was a little sketchy. They were always nice, but I remember one guy coming in. You know, they would hire him from all over, and a lot of them were non-union, and a lot of them had done time, and they had the right tattoos, they had the right look, they were missing teeth, they had, you know, they had all the look that they wanted. So they would come in, get in line to get costume, to get their, you know, prison gear on. And one guy, he was this little skinny guy, little Spanish guy, and he was like, hey, can you hold this for me? And it was a goddamn Glock. And I was like, what? I was like, dude, you can't bring your gun. He was like, oh, it's not loaded. I'm like, I don't care. You leave it in the car. So that was interesting. And you're like, oh, they are really real, you know.
that's
I did not hold it for him. I made him go leave the building and go find somewhere else to put it. Yeah. And, you know, they would see me on the street because I live in the, you know, the East Village. So a lot of these guys would live locally and they'd see me on the street. Lisa, hey man, hey, Lisa. And you see this gang of these guys that are like so scary and sketchy looking on the street. And I'm like, hey.
Oh, really? Oh.
Oh yeah, hi. How you doing? Oh no, don't cross the street. It's okay. I'm in a hurry.
Yeah.
So, oh, they wanted to, you know, dodging cars to run over to you, and you're like, no, oh hey, yeah, oh yeah. I don't remember anybody's name. They, you know, I'm one, and they're, you know, hundreds. So I still have background that comes and says hi to me on the street.
It's gonna be a nice feeling, you know, as long as they don't cross the street.
Well, you know, I guess I didn't treat them too crappy because they liked me. Yeah. And every single background person too. Everybody, you have to lay eyes on everybody. You have like some people helping you, you know, and you'll say, you know, so everybody's seeing, but at the end, before they go to set, if you're the designer, at least this is how I like to do it. Not every designer does. I want to just lay eyes on everybody because you might look at somebody and go, you know, take the hat off of him, or I don't like, let's change the tie, or too much jewelry. You know what I mean? You just like zhuzh them a little bit before they go on screen.
Right, because they kind of have to balance each other out. It's not
Yeah.
about the one costume,
Well,
it's about like
you know,
the gestalt.
well, also you want, you know, you're making a whole painting. You're not just, you know, you have to think of the big picture. And also, you know, a lot of people come and they have to be fit in costumes like right away, right there in our space, very early in the morning. And sometimes it doesn't look so great. If someone else did it and they're not sure about how to fit someone, and they come out and I'm like, that jacket just looks crappy. Let's try a different jacket. And we might do that for a minute. You know, the biggest thing is you can't hold up camera. So you definitely have a timeline and it's quick, and you got to make it work, smash them into stuff.
So when you're doing a fitting, like at the very beginning of production on a show, have you just like bought a bunch of period appropriate clothing so you have some stuff to kind of try on to see like how is this going to look, or is it just sort of you get pictures of the people and then you start going out looking at clothes or figuring out what you need to make?
Right. It's, well, you know, I go and rent. You rent a lot from these big houses. Most of them are in California. So if you're doing a big show, you go to California and you pull racks and racks of costumes, because you're going to have to fit everybody at some point, right? And it's not like the whole show is cast in the beginning. Casting constantly happens. So you pull a big variety of sizes and styles, and you have an outline of the show. Usually you may not have a script. You may not have your cast. So you just have to be smart about what, you know, works on bodies, like what could work. And then
so you've had to work without a cast or a script?
Oh, I mean, I've worked with just outlines.
Wow.
I know, it's hard. So sometimes you'll hire somebody local, like I'll find somebody in California, because when you finally get the script and you're like, oh, so now we have the Ku Klux Klan. Oh, great. You know, I remember that Brother Wore Out Thou, there was a lot of Klan, you know, that they had, and I wonder where those wound up. So you do a little research to see what house might have bought all those Klan robes, you know, to have in their rental, and, you know, you rent them really quick.
So when you're watching TV, you're kind of like window shopping a little bit.
Well, you remember things, or you ask your friends, or, you know what I mean? You just sort of try to figure it out. But, you know, unfortunately, a lot of great costumes go into a box, into a warehouse to never be seen again, which is really sad. I don't know why they do that. I think productions don't care in the long run, a lot of them. And it's all about, you know, we paid for it. This is our asset. We stick it in a box and put it in a warehouse.
Right. Eventually you put it on eBay like 60 years later.
Maybe they do, or maybe they don't. They trash stuff all the time. You'd be shocked. Like Sex in the City, when that stopped shooting, because that was shooting, you know, they were in New York, and we get the notice when there are sales from other shows. And they literally were putting designer stuff in dumpsters.
Oh yeah, because they have like a different designer thing on every single scene of that show.
So much clothes. So, but stuff was going in dumpsters, and I was just like, it's kind of horrifying, you know? It's like, can you just at least donate it to Housing Works, or, you know? So costumers have gotten better.
Like not Abercrombie, maybe it's Abercrombie and Fitch. I don't want to say specifically, because but there's one of those clothing or Urban Outfitters, I think, where they if they have leftover clothing that doesn't sell, they destroy it all because they don't want to have the branding image of being like poor people clothing.
As if.
Right.
You're right.
Really? Put lipstick on a pig, you know.
Well, their Urban Outfitters is famous for like being run by the religious right, you know, owns the company.
Right.
You know, all these little lefty kids are buying that shit.
Did you ever hear about anything like the Sex in the City dumping their stuff and managed to save something?
Yeah, like
they're laughing all the way to the bank.
Oh,
right.
For sure. Oh, I'm a big dumpster diver, believe me, from way back. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, it's the only way to go. I mean, that's where all this crap came from.
Yeah, I mean, you know, half my furniture's from the street. It's just
we call it Alston Christmas.
Can you tell? My office.
Oh yeah, like New York City, that's a perfect place to any place where you got college students moving in and out, or like a large, like in Boston, I was doing great with that stuff before I moved back.
Yeah. Right?
Oh yeah, I felt like a $400 food dehydrator. The thing looked like it was like this giant metal box. Like you could dehydrate you could probably dehydrate like a whole pig while it was still living in that thing. I think it was enormous. It was just like on the street. Took it home, plugged it in, and realized I didn't need that much jerky, but it was cool.
And that's what the last guy realized.
Right. That's right. Once he finished disposing of the body, he left it for the dog walkers of
That's
Brookline,
right.
Massachusetts.
Exactly.
And so with Oz, there's a lot of like people getting, stabbed,
Shanked?
God knows, yeah, shanked, God knows what. And so you needed to have like a lot of doubles of a lot of those costumes, I'm guessing, in
Right.
case you needed to do any kind of reshoots later on.
Well, it's in the moment too, because it's about blood. They don't shoot in order all the time, unfortunately, and in those days they shot mostly 100% practical, meaning somebody gets knifed, you got a stunt prop guy there with that retractable blade that has a blood squib in it, so it's practical, so the blood goes, so then they're like, cut, get a clean one on them, they do it again. It's that kind of thing. Now so much of it's done digitally, it really helps us for sure. They used to do they started doing on Boardwalk, it was 50-50. If you got shot in the head, they could probably do it digitally. If it was on clothes, they'd like to do a practical also, but it's a lot of work for costumes to do that, and costly. So I think it's gotten cheaper digitally now and much more sophisticated, obviously, because they can make whole cities now and you can't tell. So it's less practical these days, less practical.
And so if somebody got shanked, it couldn't be a rental outfit, I'm guessing.
Not supposed to be. I mean, sometimes that happens and you're like, okay, guys, let's get this blood out because we have to return it.
Oh, so you're like,
it happens.
Feverishly cleaning out blood stains out of a shirt, like.
Yes, that happens.
Man.
It happens. It's all right. And you know what? If you destroy something, production has to pay for it. Because sometimes the director or whatever, they're just like, no, I want this. I don't want no. You're like, okay, you got one and done, friends. And then they have to pay for it if it can't be returned. That's all. It's all about money, babe.
And so, since it was the first hour-long drama they were working on, was the network heavily involved, or did they just did Tom Fontana send them that video of him getting the tattoo and they were like, all right?
Oh, well, yeah.
Hands off.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
you know that, Ron, right? Like it's the
I was
guy
there. He did it.
You were there when he got tattooed?
He did it on set. He had the guy come. He did it on set. No, it was, I remember that. He was very squeamish, like when, but I remember that. It was pretty silly.
And so he did that, I guess, when the pilot got picked up, at least. If he did that when you guys shot the pilot, that would be
when we had already shot, and then he's like, I really want to see somebody get tattooed, and he wanted it to be real. It could have been faked, but he decided to do it. I'll be the guy, he said.
Right, we're doing this one practical.
Yeah.
Right.
One and done, friends. Don't screw it up.
And so you, after the second season, you left to go work on something else, I'm guessing?
Yes.
Was that when you were doing a lot of work with Martin Scorsese? Or?
No, I want to say I left and did Quiz Show. That was around 92. Yeah, because I really wanted to do period film, quite honestly. And even though I had designed, I went and was an assistant again to a designer so that I could do a big movie. And actually, Quiz Show was really a turning point for me because I realized I could have done the show myself. It was my first really big period movie, and it can either freak you out or calm you down. And it's weird to say, but the bigger and the more complicated, the more I like it. I don't know why. I mean, I like having.
It's like more stuff to keep your hands busy, right?
Well, I like a big crew. I like directing the crew, my crew, and I like making stuff, and really, it makes you feel really creative on those kind of shows. It's nice. On low budget stuff, you're running around so much because you have such a tiny little crew, and it's so hard to get something for nothing. your hair is just always on fire. You know what I mean? So it's less creative and just more just about problem solving when you're on something low budget and small. It's never small for us, you know. The
Right. It
crew.
seems like period
It may
pieces,
be
that would be like the
small
thing you'd
on
want to
film,
work up to.
but the work is not small. The work is a lot. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you did quiz show, and quiz show was set in the 50s, right?
Yeah, and it's all about that scandal where the
Right.
contestants were giving out answers ahead of time, which was a real thing. And it was good. I got to work with John Turturro and Ray Fiennes, and you know, there was some cool actors on that show. We were fitting, you know, fall and winter heavy wool in the middle of summer in Manhattan in a warehouse with no air conditioning. That was rough. That
sounds.
Yeah. All their background that we were fitting every day, you know, they were troopers, but oh my God, putting girdles and pantyhose on sweaty ladies was something.
And so for background, you have to like if there's a big scene in some like Boardwalk Empire, you're like getting a lot of people dressed like very quickly, right?
Yeah, I mean they come. Sometimes they come in.
Weird.
They come in waves. They'll have 40 people at 5 a.m., another 40 at 6 a.m., another 40 at 7 a.m., and then
40 people an hour.
You know, I'm just kind of making that up, but it takes a long. They have to go through hair and makeup. They get wigged a lot of times. It's a lot of work. So if they're all showing up at the same time, you just have a lot of people standing around for a long time. So sometimes they stagger them, you know. Yeah, it's a lot of work. I love it, but it's a lot of work. And usually they don't get dressed or anything back at your shop. So you have a big giant truck that you've loaded up with all the costumes, with all their names, bagged and tagged, the scene, the whole bit. And that truck goes to set wherever that is. Like on Boardwalk, we had a Boardwalk set in Brooklyn. And then everything's unloaded and put in order in like a satellite room, you know, that they built for us. So hair and makeup happens, and then people come and get dressed. So that's why you need so many crew members. It's a lot of physical labor, actually. A lot of physical. You're constantly loading and unloading. Yeah, it's hard. It is. And I worked wardrobe on Law and Order way back, like late 80s, right? And
wow, like beginning of Law and Order.
The very beginning with Jerry Orbach, and we shot in the real, you know, down in City Hall. We shot down the court buildings. Well, they're old buildings. There's no elevator in a lot of those buildings. We would hump crazy amount of stuff up and down these skinny little stairs and back stairs, and it could kill you. It was hard. It was so physically hard. Yeah. That was never fun. When they finally built like the courtrooms at stages on 23rd Street, we were all like, thank God. It was hell before that.
That's funny, because that's like not something you usually think about when you're thinking about a costumer's job is lifting heavy objects, but it sounds like a pretty major element.
A lot of wardrobe people have bad backs because of it, you know? It's true. Yeah. It's really hard. And you know, you have location people that go and scout the location and make friends with them right away and just beg them to find you something that's not upstairs. Beg them, if possible. Down ground level, please. Ground level. Think of load in, load out, please. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was definitely when I moved a few months ago. That was an advantage, was that I was ground level now. Like it's taken me 10 years, but I moved from that apartment in New York that you dropped me and Zach off at, and then that was the 5th floor, and it was kind of designed like it's the popular like pizza oven style of the 1920s. I think it was like all brick. And now I'm on the 1st floor, and it's dangerous because like I don't feel it when I bring crap into the house, as you can probably tell. But like.
Right, you can go in and out so quickly. If you forget something, it's not a big deal. You know, my apartment's on a 6th floor walk up, so believe me, I have everything I need for the day before I walk out that door.
Otherwise, that's like the one thing I don't miss about living in New York City is the walk up. Yeah.
Oh God, Yeah.
walk up as.
I mean, I'm not there right now. I'm in Kingston right now. So I haven't been in my apartment in ages. COVID.
Oh yeah, so with the pandemic,
Yeah.
like how, I mean, I know that like a lot of film and TV production has halted
Yeah,
or
it
like,
shut down for sure. I
yeah,
mean, it's back up. They put a lot of best practices in play, which I think there's mixed emotions about it. I think it's not as stringent as it started out, but I mean, you had to be in full, like you were going into surgery, truly, which makes it really hard to do your job, you know.
so
And
you
there
had to
were
do
all
like two fittings, one for the hazmat suit and then one for what they were actually going to wear on the TV show.
practically, and you know, you have to do a fitting was weird because I saw fitting photos where the actor wasn't wearing a mask, and I was like, you know, the actor should wear a mask while they're at least trying the stuff on. Why can't they keep the mask on for the photo? You know, I didn't quite understand some of those logistics because you got the fitter in full hazmat and the actors, you know, not even got a mask on. So that was weird. But they would put you in your own little pod, like you could only enter a certain way. It was very isolating. And there was this weird system of having to take the actor's clothes and put it in some sort of a vacuum seal bag and stick in another area. So they needed a lot more crew to do all these different steps because it takes time. And but I don't think the production wanted to absorb it. And I knew that was going to happen. You know, I was like, watch, producers will say it's on your head to put it in your budget, all of this new crew and new practices. And that's definitely what happened, you know, definitely. And it's not like your budget went up substantially at all,
Right.
you know. So
You have
it's a
done.
weird time to work. It's a weird time to work.
So you have worked on something though since the pandemic started?
No.
No,
But
okay. Or
but I
you just
ran,
heard about the standards and
yeah,
practices?
and these people send me pictures, and you know, I've had a zillion Zoom meetings, and no, I haven't. Unfortunately, I haven't. I've done different kinds of work, but I've not been on a set. I'm ready. I'm ready now. You know, I'm less. Well, I'm still freaked out about it because you know the numbers
Right.
are insane still. But I don't know. Got to go back. Got to go back. Got to work.
At some point.
Yeah, at some point,
Right.
exactly.
Somebody's got to make all this TV we've been watching
Right.
the last
Well,
12 months.
if you've noticed, anything that was on a shelf on TV,
Right.
there's a lot of bad TV because they're like, crap, we need content. So they just took everything they shot that they didn't like, it didn't green light, and shoved it on there, you know, to make money off of it. It's true for sure. There's just so much garbage out there.
It's funny because I only watched all of Oz for the first time like a little bit less than a year ago. Like I think I finished the first season right before we had to quarantine. And then we got this new roommate, and it was just me, my now ex-girlfriend, and this roommate. We're all freaked out. I don't think any of us left out. We were just ordering in groceries, and I don't think any of us left the house for like probably months. And it's the perfect show for that because it's just about these people stuck in this room going insane. And we would just make all these like, and that's why we were talking before the interview about like what do you want to talk about. The first thing that popped in my head, Oz, definitely I want to talk. And then like later on, I was thinking like, oh, there's probably not a whole lot to talk about costuming wise, but just sort of something. There's just like a lot of Oz in the air right now. It seemed like.
Oh, absolutely. I think you watched the perfect show so that you felt, I don't know, comforted that.
Yeah, it was like it could be a lot worse, right? Like.
Yeah, it could be a lot worse.
Like you know, I put way too much
hung from the ceiling. Yeah. I know.
I put like too much pepper in dinner, but there's not glass in it. You know, like silver linings, right? And you just sort of you said that.
It's good. Yeah, exactly. Well, it's true. Costume wise, you know, but sometimes those costumes can be, you know, it's deceivingly simple looking. I mean, I'm glad that you look at it and you go, oh, you understand the world because that's the point. You know, if something's jarring or distracting, then I'm not doing my job, you know?
Right. And then, yeah, as I was thinking about it more, it seemed like it's actually kind of a challenging, and I think I mentioned this earlier, because you have to the contributions you're making are a lot more subtle, and you're kind of working within like a restricted range of options. It seems like compared to although I guess like you're bound by the period in
And
the period piece
well,
to
or
a
you're
large
bound
extent.
by the project. You can do a real stylistic period project.
That's
you
true.
know it depends on what the concept is. I think they're still shooting the Golden Age, I think it's called, and that's turn of the century, 1800s, and but I think they're doing it in a stylistic manner, I've been told. So the costumes may not be 100% spot on of that time, and I think they might be doing something with color to just make it look a little more interesting, or less just like a period drama. Don't know. Be interesting.
Right. And that's like the fun of not living that, is that you can kind of take the pastiche route. And
I mean, I
kinda,
love doing stylistic stuff. I think it's really cool.
so when you're
I say done
stylizing a
well,
costume, like what's the process, I guess? Like you're starting out from the research, and then do you have like
well,
a conversation with the director about like how close
right.
do we want to make this to history, or
Well, yes. I mean, it's kind of taking to me like a painterly view. And production design has a lot to do with that. I mean, if they're doing comedy, a comedic thing, is like you go to production design. It's always good to work as closely with them as you can anyway. And let's say they're picked out a particular kind of wallpaper, you might want to do a dress that's the same as the wallpaper. That's been done in plays, and it's hilarious. Like somebody comes in a room and they're dressed like the room. I mean, that's what I mean about stylized. A movie came to mind. They redid that Italian film about the ballet school. Do you know what I'm talking about? That's a horror movie.
Black
Suspiria.
Swan?
No, Suspiria.
Oh, Suspiria, yeah,
Suspiria?
the Franco movie.
Well, the new one,
Or no, is that
the newish one,
Franco? No, okay.
It's again a European production. It's beautifully stylistic. Definitely worth watching. You should see the new one.
Right.
The old one is, kind of goofy and, schlocky in a good way. It became kind of a cult film for its time, 70s, I believe. But the new one is really good. And you'll see what I mean by stylistic, costume-wise. It's all done with very painterly, and color has resonance and meaning, conveying the. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Rod's just been like chomping at the bit, waiting to ask about Party Monster for a while.
I hated that job. I'm gonna tell you. Yeah, I did. I felt like the costumes, for me, it was like a daily dose of disrespect. It was low budge. I like Randy, the guys that produced and directed it, but they do documentaries. I think this was their one and only narrative. So they had never directed actors before. That's a big deal, And so I think it was really a struggle for them. And so if it's a struggle from on top, it just goes down. And the thing is, they cast like real party kids, because a lot of them were still alive and still around New York. And the ones that had their own stuff, it's brilliant because they, I can't do better than they did, and they know what they're doing. So you would let them do them, their thing. But they were also just like dragging people off the street. And I mean, it was really hard to get that kind of clothing for no money or free or loaned. And you're basically promising these design houses your firstborn, and I swear I'll get it back to you. And then you'd have some, drunk alcoholic dragged off the street by an assistant director saying, here, you put this on. It's like, whoa, and then they rip it, tear it, barf on it,
So that's like, actually, because I always thought when Harmony Korine said that he cast Gummo by like going to the nearest Burger King and just seeing who was there.
Yeah, he's
that's
not
real.
Kidding.
He's not kidding.
He's not kidding. No, he's not kidding.
I think there's two stories he's told about it. He said one of them was he was watching Sally Jesse Raphael, and there was an episode of I Huffed Glue and Survived, and then he just got everybody that was on the episode. And then the other story is that he just went to a Burger King and grabbed every kid that was in the Burger King or something. But yeah, so they are just like picking people off the street.
Yeah, and I wanted it to look really good. So I actually brought a lot of my personal stuff to it. And my stuff was just getting trashed. And I felt like there was just no respect. I got really like bummed out on that job. So I started taking everything back. Like, can't have it anymore, sorry. And then it was over. I was like, oh, thank God. Do you know, I've never even seen it. I've never watched it. I have the DVD, but I haven't watched it because Seth Green, I don't know. I had problems with casting. It was just, I didn't understand that casting at all. He was just like a fish out of water.
I've never actually seen this movie. So what does Seth Green do in it?
He's like, he plays one of the party kids. I don't know. I was confused by the casting. I just didn't. Yeah. Anyway.
Seth Green always he always kind of struck me oddly as a high school student. I know they cast him as that like all the time. Like that's pretty much, he's like known for that and the Mego doll stuff. But he always looked like how like Beck looks like he's 12 when he's 40.
Yeah.
And like
same way.
Seth Green, he could be 12 or he could be 40. Like you can't tell, and it feels like really weird in a high school show context.
Yeah, and he's extremely small, So and Michael Alec, who murdered this kid, he was not a small person. I knew him, believe it or not. He's dead now, crazy, but I knew him because he worked in a particular costume shop in New York, like doing aging and dying, because this one particular costume shop hired a lot of these kind of kids that had artistic skills. It was a non-union shop, probably didn't pay him very much, but they were a wild bunch. They were really a wild bunch. And so I remember him from that. And then all of a sudden, all this, some years go by, and then, he's in prison. I'm like, oh, I remember that guy. It was really weird, really weird. And then I'm doing the movie. It's like kind of 6 degrees of, it's so strange. But he wasn't a little mini, he wasn't small. And so I do think it's a problem when you cast an actor that doesn't have the stature of who they're portraying. I don't know. It's a problem for me. I know you're not making a documentary, but still, I don't think it sells it. It's happens many times. There's some very tiny little actors out there. Like the Jackie Kennedy movie, with what's her name, that just came out a couple of years ago. She's a very tiny actress, and Jackie was 6 foot. So you have this 5 foot girl who's like itsy bitsy, and she just looked so tiny, and it bothered me the whole movie. I couldn't suspend any disbelief or watch anything because I just felt like I was watching a very small girl play dress up in Jackie's clothes. It's weird. That's me.
Huh? Yeah. No,
I digress.
I feel you though. Yeah, like because we've been rewatching Degrassi, like not as part of the podcast, or I guess I'm rewatching it. And number one, rewatching some of Oz, it's Degrassi in a prison. It's like it's got such that like soap vibe, and then the kind of like super dramatic going into social issues thing, like this kind of operatic tenor. God, where was I? Oh yeah, so there's this kid in that show, and I think he is the right age, but he looks like he's 40. And every time he comes on screen, we're just making jokes about this like high school kid making alimony payments. This has been going on for like months, right? Like I mean, Ron only got into the Degrassi Club a few weeks ago, but like yeah, every time the 40-year-old guy comes on, somebody's like, that guy looks 40. And I think he was actually 16. So this poor guy, like, apologies to whoever this actually is, but yeah, like, like any kind of high school show where they got 35-year-olds all playing the high schoolers, or
yeah,
it's like the classic example, I guess.
Oh, it's totally classic. Like I just watched High Times at Ridgemont High again, and the only one that really does look like a high school student is the lead that has sex with all the boys. I'm forgetting her name too. Jennifer Jason Leigh. She does look high school. The rest of them look like, forget it. Married and, they're all so old looking. But
right. Sean Penn looks like he got divorced from Madonna.
For sure. There's so much road on his face already.
Right. He's just like,
he's already lived it.
It's like, I'm taking the Billy Madison route to midlife crisis.
I always thought maybe if I didn't do costumes, I could definitely do casting because I think about it a lot. I think about it a lot. I don't know. Funny.
Do you ever see a show and just like the costumes make you cringe? Like maybe you like the rest of the show and then there's just like a
Every
few
day, friends.
details.
Every day. And these, and you know, and I think, why do you have a job? That's what I first like. Why did you get hired? You know, I don't know. You know, I got to say, a lot of producers and directors, they had no clue what is correct, what looks good, and they just looked right past it. You know, it always shocks me how crappy a lot of this stuff looks.
Well, I think with like a lot of smaller films too, it's one of the first things to get overlooked. Like I remember I was reading this biography of John Cassavetes at one point, and he's talking the author's talking about him making Woman Under the Influence, and Jenna Rollins is coming up to him and it's like, what kind of clothing is she gonna wear? And he's like, who cares? And then like they had to have a meeting to kind of explain to John Cassavetes why clothing was important to people.
Yeah, well, yeah, believe me, she cared. She cared. Yeah, I know. That is unfortunately more common than not. It's unfortunate. Yeah. I mean, I was.
You'd think these people would be walking out of their houses naked every day or something.
Well, there's this attitude like, what's the big deal? They just have to get dressed. And they've said it out loud. What's the big deal? They just have to get dressed. I'm like, what's the big deal? Huh? You know, and you want to say, how many years did it take for you to acquire what you have in your closet? Think about it. You're still wearing stuff from 12 years ago that you liked and you still have it. You know, clothing is not just something you buy that's contemporary either. You have to think about, you know, you're wearing stuff you've had a really long time. I'm wearing a top I've had a really long time. You keep certain things, you know. So,
Ron bought an entirely new wardrobe just for this interview.
Oh, wow. And they all came in one package.
Right. In case he has to do any practical effects with George on the couch.
I think that's excellent. But you know what I'm saying? That's what I think about when I try to do characters. I think about their life, not just the story too. So it's really cool to put older stuff in there. Like if, especially in period movies, if you have older people, say you're doing the 60s, make sure you put 50s on the older folks, you know, or even 40s suits on some of the old guys, because they don't get rid of that stuff. They're still wearing it, you know, and maybe it's too big on them now, or, you know, it helps with the characterization if you're going for realism. I mean, I love doing things like that. It fleshes it out more. I belong to this little Facebook group that's called Photos of New York, like before 1990, right? So people post all these photos that they've got, and somebody posted a photo that was taken in 1960, and there was this woman like right away was like, but she's wearing a jacket that's from the 50s and hats on men, like it's only 1960. I'm like, yeah, duh. You know, men were still wearing hats, and she's young, but she's just a secretary or whatever. She's got like a very low paying job, and she's still wearing the same coat she's had 3 years, you know, like anybody would. So, you know, I just thought of that as an example because
I think like most of the physical environments and like clothing and like objects, things that people have, most of them are not from the immediate present unless you're talking about food. Like food packaging should be contemporary, but
like grocery stores and, you know, any kind
like my apartment is not period appropriate.
Yeah, no, that's a production designers do the same thing I do. They think about a lifetime of collecting. Yeah, for sure.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And actually that's sort of interesting with the production side, because I used to work for a guy who rented a bunch of books to Martin Scorsese for Age of Innocence.
Oh yeah.
John DeMarco over at Lyrical Ballad in Saratoga. We had this signed picture because Daniel Day-Lewis apparently walked in there when they started production because they shot parts of it in Saratoga.
Right.
And he was just like, give me every book this guy would have read. And then like him and John were like besties. But like, actually, it would be really interesting to talk to a production person because like that's definitely because I've been buying and selling used books and stuff like that. That's the first thing that's probably like kind of like how the costume stuff bugs you on TV sometimes is I'll see the books that people have on their shelves, and it doesn't look like books that anyone would naturally accumulate.
Right.
Or like the way that they're laid out. Like we watched Reality Bites a few weeks ago, and Ethan Hawke is supposed to be this like writer guy or whatever, and there's not a single book in his apartment in the entire movie.
Isn't that crazy?
Right? Like,
Yeah.
right?
And you have to get permission to show titles of any book in the background. So
okay.
a lot of times you'll see books put backwards in, or there'll be these, prop shops have generic covers that are made up books that you'll stick on books. So it's rare that you see real books in the background that you can actually read the spines of. Like, I can't read what's in back of you, so it would probably pass, you know what I mean? Because it's far enough away.
Right.
But you have to be careful.
There's the Oz DVDs.
Yeah, I see the Oz. That I see.
This is the first episode we're doing with the new set, so I
it looks good. Your place is bigger than mine. Mine is still like, ugh, too much stuff, too little space,
I mean, if I walked 2 feet, it would look like 100 times worse than your background right now. But I cleared out exactly the space of the webcam, and then and then now I gave away the secret. So
that's all right.
But no, that's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm. Like for me, for T-shirts, like I like logos. I like, because really can sell a character.
Right.
But you have to get clearance for every single thing. And like on Sneaky Peeps, and I'll use that as an example since it's a contemporary show. Oh, it just drove me crazy. I couldn't get clearance on anything. The smallest of things I couldn't get clearance because there's violence in the show. Nobody wants to give you clearance. Like, you can't use it was amazing that we were able to use on The Departed, we were actually being able to use a real baseball cap on DiCaprio, a Sox baseball cap. I mean, I didn't work on that, but it took somebody months to get clearance just so he could wear that baseball cap. Yeah. Because there's so much violence in the show, but because it's, DiCaprio and it's Scorsese, they were able to get it finally. I don't know how much they paid for it. Probably a lot. But for me, for like Sneaky, after a while, I kind of gave up, and production companies will have a library of cleared things that are already cleared images. And then you just pick from that if you want to make T-shirts or whatever you want to do. So you don't have to, worry about it. It's not as cool because it's not like something, you see on the street, or like a real band or anything,
Well, that explains a lot of like in the television I've binged, because I've been watching a lot of older television.
Yeah. Plain T-shirts, right? Everybody's plain.
Lots of plain T-shirts. If there's ever a band or an author or something showing up, unless they got the actual person to make a guest appearance, it's always like on Degrassi, it gets like really comical at point. Like, there's this band everybody's obsessed with called the Gourmet Scum. I don't think they exist. Or like, just like a lot of kind of mid to low effort, like fake names or titles or things like that. And I always thought that was just like kind of them trying to throw a little extra effort into the script, but I guess it's a lot of it's the clearance issues.
It's clearance issues. And if I'm using something real, I have to put a shirt over it or a hoodie, so maybe you only see a little piece of it.
So that would be fair use of the image.
Yeah, you can get away with it more that way. I know, but it's weird. But there are shows, of course, where you see real band T-shirts on people, and if it's really important to the storyline, they have people that are from the production company that just work on getting those clearances. 100%. I mean, I did this. I worked on this show very briefly in Pittsburgh, and I didn't stay on it. And it was such a struggle to get clearance on any logo, even a logo I had made up. It was like with the CBS streaming with the lawyer at CBS, I finally went to the director. I was like, I can't get clearance on anything. Like, you want this company name on it. They won't give me clearance. You want this? They won't give me clearance. I can't get clearance. So even the director, he was so frustrated. They wanted to fire this lawyer all the way in LA because she wouldn't bend on anything. And it's like, it just makes for really boring, it's boring if you don't have anything on anything,
Right. And that kind of like,
that generic.
You end up with like the stuff that defined realism, say 50 or 60 years ago, is actually this like fake realism now, because so much of the environment and space that we inhabit, there is like music going on in the background, or there is objects or logos on almost everything.
Yeah, it's a total fake realism. Totally.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is real life copies that. You're like, well, actually, that's not real life.
and so if let's say like I don't know, like a Hess trucking hat makes it through production by accident, could the Hess company sue you guys for having somebody wearing their hat?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yep. And it's a big deal. Costs money. Anything that costs money,
I'm just kind of curious because I feel like that would fall under fair use, but I guess that's probably a question for a lawyer. Or like, I guess you could fight it as fair use in court, but
it depends on the company. Low budget shows are a lot less litigiously concerned. But when
there's
you
just
get
less money to go after in court.
Yeah. They're just like, whatever. Yeah, have at it. You're not getting anything. And plus, it's not, I don't know. If you don't have the branding of a CBS or a big company behind you like that, it's not as big a concern. You can have more fun. I can get this. Yes, I'll present for sure. It's like, you can get these, like any of them. And if they go no, I go, okay, well, maybe someone else can help me find this because I don't have the time. So it's very time consuming.
Do you think that's why they had all did you ever see Repo Man?
Sure.
Right. And they go into the convenience store and it's all just white cans that say beer in small letters on the right.
It's funny, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that may have started out as a branding thing, but it's stylistically weird too, because it's a stylistically weird movie. So it sort of works for the film, And
then I found out later they actually sell those, at least the beer. Like I think everything in that store is just white generics, but Grand Union grocery stores in upstate New York,
right,
they would sell Genesee Ale 24-ounce cans, and it would just say beer in little letters with like completely. They should put like a little like serial number on it, and then it could have been like the White Album every time you drink a beer. But like,
I just watched part of the second season, and so I'm even looking. Okay, there's the costumes that the inmates wear, and then the outfits, and the really costumes and the outfits that the guards wear, and there's different ones. And there's Charles S. Dutton, the role that he plays, and I'm trying to imagine him. He's wearing, I think it's something like a brown tweed or something, or a brown tweed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you'll come up with color schemes for like Terry. We put him in dark shirts, dark suits. So Charles Dutton, we kept him on the warm tones. You try to differentiate like that for character. Visually it's more interesting. You don't want everybody in a blue suit necessarily, unless you're doing something that's very specific, like Wall Street. In the 60s, every guy wore a white shirt and a black suit and dark tie. There is that. Or when you see NASA, they all wore short sleeve white shirts and a dark tie.
Right, if you're like a work environment, there's a lot more.
Yeah, it was a lot more regimented. But this is a made up environment. It's a kind of a fantasy prison. So prison is definitely not like that. It's not even half as interesting. So you could have more fun with it.
Well, I was trying to imagine him instead of wearing that tweed, wearing a dark 3-piece suit and all that, and like that would have changed his character.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The clothes are signifiers to the personality of the character. But also, it's interesting, like Robin Williams, when he plays that serial killer, who develops pictures.
1 Hour Photo or whatever.
1 Hour Photo, which is a really good movie. He's really good in that role because he's so banal, and they dressed him so banal, like the everyday he disappears. And that's why he's able to
Right.
get away with what he does,
And he was like really good at that, weirdly. Like
Uh-huh.
I've been watching through all of Homicide, and I don't know if you ever
Uh-huh.
saw that episode of Homicide that he was on,
Yeah.
where like his kid gets shot at the amusement park. He was really good at that,
He's
like just
he's
kind
good
of
at the dark
disappearing
side.
as like,
Well, I mean, he has obviously a very dark side to his personality, and when he tapped into that, it was good. He was good at
oh yeah,
those.
you just wouldn't expect him to like, because he comes across as like a totally, and this is to his credit, he comes across as like the most generic middle-aged father you can imagine, which is really funny because like in the back of my head, he's Mork,
Mhm.
right? And yeah, but he just
No,
like he blends in, and I feel like with comedians, that's really a difficult thing to pull off because like a lot of dramatic films, if they cast a comedian, I'll immediately be like, oh, that's that comedian, right? Right, like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, they got David Cross there in the middle
mhm.
for
I
some
love
reason.
David
I'm just,
Cross.
oh yeah, I love David
He's
Cross, but I'm
amazing.
just like, oh, it's not Mr. Show.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
know,
yeah.
like-
Yeah, but David Cross is a little different. He's done so many very different things.
Mm.
But well, like Adam Sandler. I mean, did you see Uncut Gems? I mean, that's
oh
insane.
yeah, like Punch Drunk Love.
Yeah,
And
he's really good.
yeah.
He can really pull it out. He's a good actor. So I worked on one of his movies. I did Mr. Deeds.
Mm.
And that again, doing comedy is
Oh wait,
hard.
Mr. Deeds, yeah, because I remember Zach had that script in his room.
Yeah, that's funny. Comedy is hard too because especially with somebody like Adam, he's got his boys with him. He's got like a whole posse that's with
Like
him
an
all the time.
entourage.
Yeah, and yes, it is very entouragey, and they're
Like
always
almost like Billy
spitballing.
Madison, like he's actually got the guys following him.
Does have the guys. So he's like he's always spitballing. They're always like joking together and coming up with ideas. And if they like something, then all of a sudden you got to find it, And on Mr. Deeds, it was like that. It was like, hey, we want this guy in an astronaut costume. And I'm like, great. You don't want to shoot today, do you? Because it's got to come from California. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of that. It's you work hard in comedy, you work hard. You run around a lot because they always want something silly, Well, at first I was like, well, you can shoot it tomorrow. We'll have it. Please. Yeah. It's
So
hard.
you could find an astronaut costume in one day.
Yeah, I mean, all the rental houses have
Oh,
stuff
that's
like
true.
that.
Yeah.
It's just not in New York. It's on the West Coast.
So, I guess that's. I'm out of questions. You got any? I mean, I'm happy to keep talking, but.
Well, we've talked for an hour, almost an hour and a half now. That's long.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's not what you think it is, costumes at all on a face value.
So people are actually naked?
Yes, I see lots of naked people. But it's a huge amount of work. It's probably one of the most intimate jobs on the show, when it comes to the actors. I mean, they have to take their clothes off in front of you. It's like, if you can come up with a costume that the actor loves, it 100% enhances the performance. You don't ever try to make an actor wear something that they're not comfortable in, or you don't try to convince them of something that they're not on board for, because it always will come back and kick you in the ass in some way. So even if you're like dying because you love that red top so much, she doesn't want to wear that red top, don't make her wear the red top, So I always talk to actors before we have our fitting to see what their ideas might be, because I want to hear what they think. If it's a contemporary show, there's lots of actors that want to wear certain designers. You always try to bring them something that they wanted to make them feel safe and listened to in the environment of the fitting. And then you can come around to trying other things on them that you want. And sometimes it's just splitting the difference between what they want, you want, the director wants. It's a lot of nuance, I guess is how I want to end on it. And it's a lot about character study in humans too. It's not just about what's on the page. You have to be good talking to humans. Actors are weirdos. So it's, good actors, especially because as people, they're formed differently. If you're a super good actor, I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio, I think, is a brilliant actor, but as a person, he is the most low-key dude. He's so low-key. it's almost like he saves
Like
everything.
narcoleptic low key, or like
I mean just quiet, and he doesn't give opinions. If you ask him his opinion, he's like, whatever you want, guys. Like, he's very like that. And then he gets in front of the camera and it's like kapow. So everybody's different, you know. It's a hard job. The end.
Cool. All right. Well, I guess that's been this session of Anomaly Questionable Movies. I'm still Dan.
And I'm still Ron.
And I'm still Lisa, not Linda.
Not Linda.
And you're the only person who got the sign off on the first time. So thanks for coming on again. Thanks for talking to us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
And is there I mean, I guess with like costuming, it's not really like a public job kind of business, but is there like a website or anything you'd like to send people to?
You could go on IMDb and look me up.
Okay.
That's probably the most comprehensive if you want to see what I've been up to.
Okay, cool.
My own website is a little lagging. I need it worked on.
All right. Thanks for coming on.
Meet you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Dan. Bye, Ron. Nice to meet you. Bye, guys.
Take care.